Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Nagamar Chetty and Charlie State.
Our headlines. A plan to protect jobs. The Chancellor will today unveil new measures to try to avoid mass redundancies this winter.
Yes, good morning. What will follow the furlough scheme, because it ends in 5 weeks, a wage top-up and more business loans could be on the way.
After months of delay, the NHS Covid-19 contact tracing app is now available in England and Wales. Anyone with a smartphone is being urged to download it.
Good morning. This morning I'm at National League side Chesterfield, who are yet to start their season and now face a really uncertain future after the latest pause on fans returning to stadiums.
And rather changeable conditions to come today with a mixture of sunshine, showers, the odd flash of lightning too. I'll have your full forecast details this Thursday on Breakfast.
Good morning, it's Thursday, September the 24th. Our top story today, the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, will set out how the government plans to protect jobs after the current furlough scheme expires next month.
He's expected to unveil a package of measures after warnings that new coronavirus restrictions could lead to mass redundancies this winter. Our political correspondent Ian Watson has more.
Coronavirus has changed how we work, where we work, and even if we're able to work at all. Boris Johnson has said the furlough scheme has supported 12 million jobs, but it will be withdrawn at the end of next month. As coronavirus cases continue to rise, employers, unions and the opposition have called on the Chancellor to extend or replace it. Today, Rishi Sunak will set out how. The Treasury have been studying schemes in Germany and France where companies bring back staff on reduced hours. Employers and the government both chip in to make up for some of the lost wages. The Chancellor is also likely to extend schemes that make it easier for struggling firms to get vital loans. But there will also be a recognition that not every job can be protected.
A universal scheme of the nature that we've had so far is probably not sustainable beyond the end of October. I think what will matter now is targeting. And so what he's got to do is use the imagination that I think he has shown hitherto to make sure that the support is targeted on those businesses that can get through this crisis and be sustainable into the medium and longer term.
This autumn's budget has been cancelled. That means there won't be any tax rises.
Even if the budget has been scrapped, it's important that the Chancellor signals what he's going to do to support Britain's businesses and Britain's workers. And as well as a successor to the furlough scheme, support for short-time working, he also needs to set out what we're going to do to invest, for example, in low-carbon electricity, in building new houses, in building a public transport system that this country desperately needs and deserves. These are the things that are going to keep the British economy moving as we get through these next few difficult months with the coronavirus.
Labour is accusing the government of being slow to act. The party's leadership say they suggested the idea of wage subsidies more than a month ago. But for many people who are laid off from work and who are fearful of furlough ending, any extra help from government is likely to be welcomed. Ian Watson, BBC News.
Let's get more from our political correspondent, Jessica Parker. Jessica, good morning. I mean, it's not as if the Chancellor hasn't been under pressure to act when it comes to extending in some form or at least adapting the existing furlough scheme.
Yeah, there has been growing pressure, I suppose, particularly after the announcements we heard earlier this week about new restrictions and how, for example, from this evening, pubs and restaurants are going to have to shut at 10 p.m. They're not going to be able to do anything other than tables service, and as well the new advice to go back to working from home if you can, potentially hollowing out those kind of business districts, some town and city centres and all the businesses that rely on that kind of traffic. So I think because of that, a pressure did build on the government. So Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, will want to address that this afternoon. But I think the other thing he might want to address as well is public confidence. Economies do to some extent run off confidence, and the news this week, of course, has been a little bit bleak at times in terms of where we are with the virus as people prepare for a resurgence and try and suppress it as the government bring in these new measures. The other interesting thing as well, of course, no autumn budget, and as Ian was saying, that means that we won't hear this year as to whether there are going to be tax rises. That puts off a bit of a political problem for the Chancellor, because whenever there's been speculation about potential tax rises recently, like night follows day, Conservative MPs have emerged saying that they don't want to see that happen. But more broadly, I think what we're looking at here is the government still trying to get the country through the crisis rather than yet figuring out how to pay for it.
Jessica, thanks very much. Jessica Parker there.
A coronavirus contact tracing app has been finally launched in England and Wales today after months of delays. It's been described as an important step forward by the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock.
Anyone over the age of 16 is being asked to install the app on their smartphone. Simon Jones has more.
The app will help us safely live our lives, protecting you and others.
An advertising campaign urging us to get the app and protect our loved ones. This is how it works. The app uses a Bluetooth connection. Once it's installed, if you come into close contact with others, that will be recorded on your phone. Then, if you report through the app a positive test result, those who may have been close enough to be infected will be sent an anonymous alert. They will need to self-isolate. An early version of the app didn't work and had to be scrapped, despite being hailed as a potential game changer by the government in May. But now there's a new version. Well, I've just downloaded the app. It's pretty quick to set up. The government says it's secure and will help keep us safe. But its success will very heavily depend on how many of us choose to use it. The government admits, though, that there's a 3 in 10 chance that someone who's notified they're a high risk will actually be low risk, but it's working to improve the accuracy. The app will also allow users to scan a code to register their details when they visit pubs and restaurants. Scotland and Northern Ireland have already launched their own versions, but the evidence so far suggests apps are only useful as an addition to effective tracing programmes staffed by people. Simon Jones, BBC News.
Throughout history, there have been many black and brilliantly gifted composers. So why don't we know more about them?
We're setting the record straight, and I have to say, it's about time.
He has the skill to do it, and the daring to do it.
Somehow their story has not been told.
Come on! That's fantastic!
Join Lenny Henry and Susie Klein for Black Classical Music for Forgotten History, Sunday at 9 on BBC 4 and iPlayer.
Good morning to you. You're watching Breakfast with Charlie State and Naga Munchetti.
We're going to speak to the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, now. Mr Hancock, welcome to the programme. We're talking this morning about the new NHS Test and Trace app, which is being launched. You did try and launch it before. That was paused for technical reasons. Can you explain to people this morning how this system works?
Yes, the app that is now available to download has the chance to help everybody who downloads it to protect themselves and their loved ones, because it can detect when you've been in close contact with somebody who then, if they test positive for COVID, then that will let you know. But it also allows you to scan the QR code of any hospitality venue, anywhere that you go, so that we can then contact trace when people catch coronavirus and find out who's been to the same venue. And it also has links to all of the information about the various rules that are in place and the risk in your area. And the central thing is that the more people who download it, the safer that they will be and the safer that their loved ones and their community will be.
Can you go back to some of the basics for us, as people will be learning about this? So, I've been leading my life. I have downloaded the app, and it pings.
Yeah.
And I read something on there. Tell me what that is, and if it's telling me that I've been in close contact with someone who's tested positive, what am I required to do?
So on the app, exactly as you say, if you've been in close contact with somebody and they've tested positive, then that will tell all the people they've been in close contact with, their apps, that there's a problem. And a screen will come up on your app and a notification saying that you have been in close contact with somebody with coronavirus and that you need to self-isolate. Now, that self-isolation is voluntary, unlike it's now mandatory to self-isolate if you are told to phoned up by NHS Test and Trace. But if you need the support, the financial support to self-isolate, then you can click through and declare that. And so what it does is it gives us another tool in the armoury, if you like. It's another capability to help us collectively to tackle this virus, alongside the testing and the human contact tracing. You know, the doctors who phone up. This allows us to find, all of us, to find contacts that we wouldn't otherwise know. Because if you've been sitting near somebody on a bus, for instance, you might not know who they are. So if you test positive, you couldn't tell the contact tracers that, but your phone will be able to tell you. And so it helps to keep people safe.
So when it pings, I'm not required by law to self-isolate, so I can make that choice. Equally well, my employer, if I have one, may or may not pay me whilst I self-isolate.
No, they need
when you
to pay.
start...
Your employer, just to pick you up on that one point, your employer, if you are self-isolating, having been told to by the app, then that is akin to being sick, so your employer does need to support you through that, yes.
They're
and
required to. They are
yes,
required to.
Yes, in the same way that if you were ill, and the financial support is available.
Can you just clarify for us, apologies for interruption, are you talking about statutory sick pay or pay?
I'm talking about as if you were ill, so if your employer pays statutory sick pay, that's
so
the
let me go back to
minimum
the scenario I was trying to paint for you.
Yeah.
So take that situation where you're entitled to statutory sick pay, which you know is a very small amount of money. There is no law to require you to self-isolate. You may only get statutory sick pay for a fortnight. Why would someone do what you're asking them to do?
Well, the vast majority do. And the reason for that is because we are all in this together, and we all need to come together to solve the problem of coronavirus. And so even before we made self-isolation mandatory last week, the vast majority of people, when asked to do it, do so. And that's for a very good reason, because everybody in the country knows that this helps to keep you safe, and it helps to keep your loved ones safe. That's what self-isolation is all about. And we all know people who have been self-isolating. I'd be surprised if any one of your viewers doesn't know anybody who's been touched by this system, this very unusual system in Britain of having to self-isolate if you have been a close contact of somebody who's tested positive. So the vast majority do, and I think that's wonderful that society's come together that way, and the app is just one more tool to help us all tackle this horrible disease.
The vast majority, you have said yourself, and in the past few days the Prime Minister as well said, it is a small minority who are causing the problem. So you're repeating, if you like, the problem that exists, which is the vast majority, yes, probably will do the right thing. We know now that the small minority are the reason why we're in the new measures we're in.
Well, this app will help to find more contacts who we don't know about through normal contact tracing. Because if you think about it, if you test positive, what happens right now is that you get called by a doctor who from NHS Test and Trace, who asks you who you've been in close contact with. And that they then get called and told to self-isolate and offered the £500 if they're on low incomes. What the app can do is find the contacts that human contact tracers can't find. For instance, people you don't know because, in the example I gave, you've been sitting near them on public transport. That might be one example, but there'll be others. And therefore, it helps us to find more people who are at risk of having the virus. And that's why downloading the app is good for you, but it's also good for your loved ones, it's good for your community, because it helps us to find more people who are at risk. And then it has also a whole load of other useful features with more information and helping the contact tracing when you go to a hospitality venue with the QR codes.
The point at which this app becomes useful is entirely, as I understand it, entirely down to the proportion of people who do download it. So what percentage of the population, it's over 16s, need to download this app for it to be genuinely useful? Do you know that?
Well, the answer is the more the better. So
we don't know. We don't know a figure of how many people need to download it before it will have an impact.
there isn't a figure. It's not that we don't know the figure. As soon as you have 2 people downloading this app, then it becomes useful, because if they are in close contact and one of them has tested positive, then the other will know about it. And that's already happened. So the more people across the country, this app is for England and Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland also have their own versions, but they'll talk to each other. The more people who download this app, the more effective it will be. But there isn't a fixed figure on that scale, if you see what I mean.
On that theme, and it's an important point you make, which is, I guess, fairly obvious. The more people who download it, the better. This morning, lots of people getting in touch with us, trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Paul Taverner got in touch. Will you ask Matt Hancock why it won't run on iPhone 6 and older phones? There are tens of thousands of circulations. I have an iPhone 6, says LF White. The app doesn't load because software is too old. Kathy MacArthur has the same story. A lot of people are trying to download this and do what you're asking them to do. It doesn't work on older phones.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that so many people are trying to download it.
But it doesn't work.
Excellent.
There's nothing good about that.
No, I'm delighted that so many people, because only a very small proportion of people have phones that don't have the latest iOS software. It needs the iOS software that was released in this April. The reason for that is because it needs the accurate version of Bluetooth for it to work as accurately as possible. And we've been working very closely with Apple and with Google, who have done a remarkable job. And I also want to thank the mobile phone operators, EE, O2, Vodafone and 3, who have done great work in making sure that there are no data costs to any customer. So, of course, there are technical requirements. In the same way that if you don't have a phone, obviously you can't download it. But the vast majority of people have got the latest download of the Apple software. It works obviously on Android devices too. The best thing that they could do if they want to get the app, of course, is to upgrade. I get there.
Well, to buy a new phone. And on that idea,
I was going to come on to that. I get the challenges to that. But the point is that the more people who download it, the better it will be. And we have had to have certain technical specifications. That's understandable. But it has been but overall, for the vast majority of smartphone users, it's really simple to download, and it will help you and help you protect your loved ones.
And in terms of reaching those who possibly are most at risk, for example, if you said it yourself, those who have the least money are the least likely to have newer phones. And equally well, and I'm wary of making sweeping generalisations here, but there is every chance that older people will have less sophisticated phones, maybe not have smartphones at all. And surely those are some of the people you would most like to reach.
Well, of course, this is one part of a whole suite of things that we've done to tackle this disease. There is, it's one of a very wide range of actions that we're taking. I'm accused of many things as Health Secretary, but to be accused of the app not being able to be downloaded for people who don't have phones. I mean, that's
not what I said.
Of course you were.
That's not what I said.
Of course they don't. But in a way, the point is that I'm trying to encourage as many people as possible to download the app. This is a cross-party thing. We've been working very closely with the Labour government in Wales, who are doing it. It is good for you. It's good for your neighbour. It's good for your community. I appreciate that it isn't universal, because not everybody's got either a phone or a phone that works for this app, but the vast majority of us do, and the more people who download it, the safer we'll be. It's as simple as that.
Are you concerned about the rising issue of coronavirus infections in the young? And I want to talk specifically about students. And I know that Glasgow, of course, is in Scotland, but there is a particular issue there. That same issue, I know there's been problems in Liverpool as well. How concerned are you about specifically the university environment and the rise in cases?
Well, actually, let's link the two subjects together, because the app will help an awful lot amongst university students, I think. Of course, I'm concerned about rising cases amongst people at university and younger people, for two reasons. The first is because no matter what your age, even though you're much less likely to die of COVID if you're younger, you can still get long COVID, meaning months and months of symptoms that mean that it's hard to get out of bed in the morning, that you can have aches and pains going on for months. And the second reason is that the more young people who get it, the more they spread it to older people. And sadly, we've seen in this second rise in the number of cases since the start of September. At first, it was almost entirely amongst younger people, but we've then seen it start to spread to throughout the age range as well, amongst very largely amongst adults. Very few under 16s are getting it. That is, so that is a very serious concern.
It has been suggested that if the issue within universities is still bad in the months up to Christmas, that students would be told not to go home at that time. Is that something you would consider?
Well, we haven't reached that point yet.
Is it something you would consider?
I don't rule out anything. And if you've had the last 9 months that I've had, you'd understand why. We don't rule out anything. It's not something that I'd want to do. But what's important is that we, of course, keep people safe and keep the virus under control.
And I just want to ask you finally, in connection with, as you said before, all things are connected here. We're expecting Rishi Sunak to make a statement. I know that you'll say you don't want to, run through what he's announcing, but should we be expecting a significant announcement that will affect many people? What sense can you give us of what's coming up?
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. But what I'd say is that throughout the crisis, we have had an unprecedented economic response in support of the health response, and we've been preparing in case we needed to make the sort of health intervention that we did on Tuesday and the tightening up of the rules. We've been preparing contingencies for the economic support that would entail, and the Chancellor will set that out later. As you know, we've put in an absolutely unprecedented amount of support into the economy. Sadly, we can't save every job, we can't save every business, but we're doing the most that we feasibly can.
Health Secretary Matt Hancock, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.